Hi everyone, I'm back today. This is Mr. Rock. If this is the first time you've ever been watching our videos, we have talked about different things that you can do with your kids through the day and how do we cope with or deal with what's going on in the world around us. So I wanted to touch base and talk a little bit about routines and schedules because most of you know that when your child is in a daycare setting or preschool, they have set guidelines that they follow. So whether it's first thing in the morning, everyone eats, then they go to the bathroom, then they do activities, and then lunch, nap time, whatever it is. So it's important that while you're still trying to be comfortable with being in the house and dealing with all the life to day-to-day stresses, that keep in mind that the kids will thrive better with a schedule or a routine in place. If you're not familiar with what your kids do during the day, you can always reach out to your school, the teachers. Someone there could help you know what order of things that they do. And I'm not saying by any means you want to follow it exactly. What I'm saying is you want to put something in place that would be really helpful for you and your family because there's some benefits to it. So I want to talk about some of the importance of a routine when it comes to kids. First, it influences their emotional, cognitive, and social development. And what I mean by that is they need that time to allow their brain to process what's happening. If you just constantly change a routine, it could be detrimental to their brain development because if you're not aware, up to age 5, most of the brain develops then. So you want to make sure you're still following those routines that they're already accustomed to. It helps them feel secure. If you have a child at home who has ADHD, if he is autistic or has some other type of deficit, you want to make them feel secure, and the easiest way to do that is to have a set routine that they understand. And I'll get more into how to do that here shortly. You you want to set expectations, and through that routine, they're going to have those expectations that they need to follow, so they know what's coming next. Which goes back to feeling secure because now there's not chaos working around them. Some of the other benefits that it'll do is it will actually help start to sway some behavioral problems that you might see if they haven't developed any now. After being out of school for several weeks, over time they're going to start to be more defiant, more resistant to doing the things that you're asking them to do, especially since they still need to do some of their schoolwork during the day. Plus, long term, it's going to help with their engagements with other people, especially those that they are around that have the same schedule. So I said I was going to mention how do we make a routine schedule in there. I have one here for my boys. So every morning they know that they have to get dressed, they have to eat their breakfast, they have to brush their teeth, and then we do schoolwork. And then I outlined the schoolwork on how we're going to follow it through the day, and I allowed for breaks in between so that they can process some of the information that we've covered, but it also gives them a sense of while they're at school, they're still getting those routine breaks, whether it be going to the bathroom, lunch, recess, just going to another classroom with some other students to have more social engagement. For the younger kids, they have labs or stations that they go to. So you want to make sure you work that in there. So with that, you want to make sure there's a nice balance. So you want to see what activities you have for the day. It's going to take a little bit of prep work on your part, so you want to predetermine how many activities you want to do on top of the schoolwork that they already have. And every day you want to constantly be making a little bit different. I know before in the past I've talked about attention spans, how long they're able to stay with you on a certain task. So you want to keep that in mind when you're developing your schedule. you don't want to ever have a kid that's not fully alert when you're doing it, which is why I suggest having them be part of the routine and schedule part. Ultimately, you do have the say, but if they're sleepy or or hungry, you can't really expect them to fall, and that's a good time that you want to bring in a break. So you can still outline that, but you want to understand that if they're not fully there, they're not really going to learn or grow either. And then the longer play periods results in increased play behaviors. So what I mean by that is if you allow them to learn through play, they're going to have a more healthier, happier day, which in turn goes back to some of the behavior problems that you may already start to be experiencing or have not yet, but you want to stop that before that happens. Yes, and I have notes because it's sometimes a lot of information to keep together. So what makes a really good daily schedule? You want to have a good balance of active time and quiet time. You want to have some indoor stuff and some outdoor stuff. And the weather's going to play a lot in the outdoor-indoor activities. So if you have a garage that's open, you can count that as outdoor time. Just open up the overhead door as long as it's not too cold, and do some of the things that you normally do in the outside. Do them there, so you're getting a little bit of the outdoor. You want to have some directed versus non-directed time. And what I mean by that is anything that's directed is going to be something that you are helping them do. And then the non-directed times would be the things that you allow them a little bit of freedom with it. So, like I mentioned earlier, my son has a morning routine schedule that he has to follow. He would do all those, and that would be considered non-directed. But when it comes down to the specific activities or the schoolwork, that's going to be more of a directed activity. So with my kid, we have visual schedule along with a worded schedule. So it does a couple of different things. One, you're learning how to put words to an actual object. So you're teaching them to read a little bit, but you're also doing it so that the children who have a harder time with the following routines or schedules, or say they have an extremely short attention span, sometimes having just the words there really doesn't mean a whole lot to them, even if they can read it. So the picture cues help them so they don't have to necessarily be worried about, well, I don't know what that means. And then you want to type out specific times. So you want to keep it to a routine every day. So every morning, say your kid wakes up at 7:30, by 9 o'clock, all their early morning routine stuff should be done. Or you can predetermine 8 o'clock, whatever is best for you. But in our house at 9 o'clock, we start to do the schoolwork, and that goes all the way up through till lunchtime. And if it goes past lunch, it's because he was not staying attentive to the activities that we had planned for the day. Now, in your classrooms, a lot of times they'll have like a color chart, which most of you probably have seen those. What color were they for the day? Green, yellow, red, whatever scheme that they have. You can still instill that at the house during school time activities, and then when they get to their free time, then you don't really want to say, oh, you're being bad, so we're going to put you on red or yellow, because that's an unstructured time that you have. So you can do it a couple different ways. You can just get a regular piece of white paper, or you can get one that has some lines on it, like a college rule notebook, and then just make a bulletin point list of what you want them to do. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or spectacular. If you don't have access to a computer to print off pictures, draw them. Let them be part of the creative process when it comes to making an actual activity into itself. And while you're doing it, say, okay, starting tomorrow, these are the things that we're going to do. So then they start to have a pre-sense of what's about to happen as they move along. So, if you have any more questions or you want me to expand on it, please let me know. There's always a way to contact me through the comments. So we're going to move on to, I have a really fun activity that we can do today. It doesn't take a whole lot of prep time. I think I had about 20 minutes in cutting out all my materials. Obviously, if you're going to have your child cut out the pieces, your only prep time is going to be basically getting the materials together and drawing out the shapes. So we're going to make a bunny with paper bag. So it could be a puppet. You guys can act out scenarios later. You can use them in your schoolwork, or you can just get silly with it and everyone makes a puppet and make your own story afterwards. So I already have all my materials pre-cut out. All I got to do is glue mine together, and I will include a picture if I can later that you can see the template for all the parts. So first we're going to start with our regular lunch bag, not a gigantic one. I chose blue for my bunny only because it was the only material that I had laying around. I did not realize until I was prepping for this, I forgot all my construction paper in my office. So first you want to take your glue stick, regular glue, whatever you have. You want to glue part of it underneath the flap, kind of like this. This will help change the color of the bag. If you can buy pre-colored bags, that's great. Again, just using materials that you have at home is always a good idea because you're teaching recycling, reduce, reuse, recycle, which we can always talk more about that later. I know my one son, he will constantly go through the trash cans looking for stuff that he can reuse. I don't agree with that because it's kind of messy and dirty, but I kind of blame his mom on that because she's real big on the reduce, reuse, and recycle. The only difference between her and I is she would have a separate bin, just, okay, this is what you can go through. Whereas I'm very reluctant to use that because we don't recycle anything here. We burn our paper and our cardboard. So if we lived in the city, it'd be different. We live out in the country, so recycle is not really an option for us. So I don't want you to think that I'm not being part of the reduce, reuse, and recycle. So now I have a head that I have here. I drew some eyes on it just to kind of get it a little bit of character. And then we have our nose. I left my nose white. I thought it would be kind of fun. Glue this together. If you don't have stick glue and you're using Elmer's glue, keep in mind that you're going to have some dry time. So if your child is not very patient when it comes to taking the time to allow stuff to dry, you want to make sure that you explain to them that we have to let our puppets dry before you use it. And I have 2 ears here. Now, before I glue the ears on, I did cut out insert pieces and I used brown for mine. And again, it goes back to I'm only using what I have available to me today. I promise in the future, any crafts that I do, I'll try and include some more color. I did manage to stop and pick up some more construction paper today while I was out doing my other duties. Alright, so we're going to glue these in here in the center. If you don't have access to a printer and you can't copy off my template, don't be afraid to just draw your own. A bunny is probably the easiest one to do. It's just some really long ovals with some smaller ones to glue inside. You don't necessarily have to cut out these pieces here, you can just draw on it. So we're going to glue our ears. So we're going to take this and flip this over. I'm going to put some glue right here. And then however you glue it on, that's fine. You know, and your kids are going to do a little different. When I work with the kids, I always let them be as creative as they want. It gives them a chance to express themselves. So yeah, you want to make sure that you don't ever really criticize their work. If you want to help them a little bit, you can. You can guide them. And then I have a brown spot for the center here. We're going to glue this on. If you want to, I didn't make hands for mine, but if you want to, you can. So now we have a little bunny. You guys, make up a story and act it out. Maybe you can have different size bunnies. You could talk about how your bunnies stay in a den, and how the mom takes care of them, or however you want that story to go. So it's a really cool idea. It's simple. It only took 5 minutes for me to glue it together once I had it prepped. So something else I want to talk about, and how do you get new things to your kids? So in our house we do Lego. I mean, I even have Mr. Spark sitting here, and Jungle Jim's on the table, and Alphabet Andrea and Andy's over there. They're always around. Maybe in one of my other videos I'll set up to where you can see some of my Lego displays that we have. But Lego is awesome in the fact that if you sign up on their website, you can get the Lego Life magazine. It's free. They'll get a monthly magazine. Is it monthly? Yeah, I think it's monthly. Until they're the age of 8. It has little comic stories in them that they can read. There are also little creative stuff that you can do in here. Let's see, this one is more of like a hidden image. Find these tools inside this garage. And they just kind of go from there. And yeah, there's a couple ads in there because, I mean, obviously they want you to buy their product. But yeah, it's great. And it's, like I said, it's free. They send them to you once a month. I think it took us about 8 weeks to get our first magazine, and then we've gotten them pretty consistent after that. They do have an app for the tablets and the phones that you can do, and they have little games, and they're really big on the education part, because now you can get creative, and there's the little sub games will teach you some things. So that kind of covers what I want to talk about for the adults. If your kid's in the room, invite them over. I have a really interesting book to read today. And I thought it was a little fitting, considering most children, as they develop, they tend to look at other people and they wonder, why does that person have those things and we don't? So the book I brought today is called Spoon. You may have heard of it before. If you haven't, it's a fantastic book. So let's get started. We have the front cover here, the back cover, and the spine. The two important people of the book is the author and the illustrator. The author writes the words and the illustrator draws the pictures. They didn't really clearly mark down who did what part, but we have Amy Roos Rosenthal, I hope I said that right, and Scott Magoon. So one of them wrote it and the other one drew the pictures, or it was probably a joint collaboration since it doesn't specifically say. This is Spoon. It's a cool little drawing, don't you think? And this is Spoon's family. He's got a lot of friends and family in here. On Sunday, Spoon goes to visit his Aunt Silver. He has to be on his very best behavior there. She's very fancy and proper. Goodbye, darling. See, he's even got a little tie on. At bedtime, Spoon likes to hear the story about his adventurous great-grandmother who fell in love with a dish and ran off to a distant land. Lately, though, Spoon has been feeling blue. What's wrong? Asked his mother. You look like you're a bit bent out of shape. Nothing, mumbled Spoon. I don't think he's very happy. It's just that, I don't know, all my friends have it so much better than I do. Like Knife. Knife is so lucky he gets to cut things. He gets to spread. I never get to cut or spread. Yes, Knife is pretty spiffy that way, isn't he? And Fork. Fork is so lucky. She gets to go practically everywhere. I bet she never goes stir crazy like we do. Fork does get out and make herself useful, doesn't she? Fork does all kinds of stuff. And Chopsticks, they're so lucky. Everyone thinks they're really cool and exotic. No one thinks I'm cool or exotic. Those chopsticks are something else, aren't they? Do you know how to use chopsticks? Meanwhile, if only Spoon knew what his friends were saying that very minute. Spoon is so lucky, said Knife. He's so fun and easygoing. Everyone's so serious with me. No one's ever allowed to be silly with me like they are with the Spoon. They got Spoon banging on a pot. Spoon is so lucky, said Fork. He gets to measure stuff. No one does that with me. Why do you think that we don't use forks to measure stuff? Spoon is so lucky, said Chopsticks. He can go places by himself. We could never function apart. It's kind of hard to use one chopstick by itself. That night, after a bedtime story, Spoon's mom turned off the light, tucked him in, and said, You know, Spoon, I wonder if you realize just how lucky you are. Your friends will never know the joy of diving headfirst into a bowl of ice cream. Have you ever dived into a bowl of ice cream? They'll never know what it feels like to clank against the side of a cereal bowl. They'll never be able to twirl around in a mug or relax in a hot cup of tea. Spoon hadn't thought of it that way. He laid awake for a very long time. His mind was racing. He felt so alive. There was only one thing to do. I can't sleep. Come snuggle. Come, Spoon. Ooh, he gets to the fun part now. And so he did. Sweet dreams. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed this story, and I look forward to hearing from you again. If you ever need anything, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help.